Hi guys, today I'm potting up my tomato plants. This is the second episode in a series that I'm doing on growing tomatoes from seed. If you missed the first video, I'm going to put a link up on the screen and you can go back and watch that if you're new to growing tomatoes. And these are the tomatoes that I started from seed just a few weeks ago, and as you can see, there's a lot of really nice growth. They look really healthy, but I do need to get them separated. As you can see, there's 3 and 4 tomato plants in some of these cells, and I need to get them potted up. Even if there was only 1 tomato plant in each cell, I would still need to pot them up because they're outgrowing these little seed cells. The first thing I need to do is prep my potting soil. I'm just using this Miracle-Gro potting soil. This is sold indoors at stores like Walmart. Because these plants are going back in my house after I pot them up, I don't want to use a big bag of wet potting soil found outdoors at garden centers. You could bring all kinds of things into your house if you do that, like bug eggs. So it's best to get a dry potting mix if you can. And because this is dry, I am pre-moistening the soil. I'm going to let it soak in for 5 minutes or so, and then I'll be ready to pot up my tomato plants. Alright, now it's been about 5 minutes. The water has soaked in pretty good, and I'm just going to give this a good mix around with my hands. I want this potting soil to be moist but not sopping wet. I can squeeze a little bit of water out of it, and that's perfectly fine. You just don't want to squeeze it and see a whole bunch of water draining out of it. You've got it too wet. If that happens, you can just always add some more potting soil to the mix, and it should soak up the excess water. I pot my tomato plants up into cups. This is a 9-ounce cup. I drilled a hole in the bottom, took a big old Sharpie and wrote the variety on the side of the cup. If you want to keep track of which varieties you're growing, you definitely want to label them. Now I'm scooping the dirt into the cups, just loosely putting it in. Like that is fine for now. You don't need to pack it down at this point. There's a couple of ways that you can go about separating these plants or plucking out plants or whatever you're wanting to do. I've got 3 little plants in this cell. This one right here is really tiny compared to these 2, so it's not a problem just to pull it out. That's perfectly fine. Now, if I only wanted one of these plants, instead of pulling them apart, since these are more similar in size, I would just cut this one off right here down by the base, but I'm not going to do that. I actually want both of these plants. To get these separated, I'm just going to rip them apart. You can try to untangle the roots a little bit if you'd want to. Even if you butcher the roots on one of your plants, like I did on this one, the roots will grow back. So what I do is, with all my tomato plants, not just the ones that I butcher, I plant them really deep. So I'm going to plant this. I'm going to put the soil level to probably about there, right below the leaves. And if you have one of these cotyledon leaves in the way, these are the first leaves that come out when your tomato plants sprout up. Like these leaves here on these little baby plants. You can just pull these off. The plant doesn't need those leaves anymore. It has these leaves, the true leaves, to collect energy from your grow light or the sunlight, whatever you're doing. And yeah, so these roots are going to grow back down here, and all along the length of the stem, this plant is going to grow roots as well. Just fill up your cup with soil like I did. Take a marker or just something kind of big, put your hole in there like that, and then you can drop your plant right in. I'm going to push this soil down just a little bit like that, and I'll just add just a little bit more here. And that's all there is to it. Now I'm going to do the other plant, the one that I totally ripped the roots off of. That hole doesn't need to be as deep since the roots aren't very long. Just put it down in there and push it in a little, and that looks pretty good to me. If you're growing a lot of different varieties, you might notice that the leaves are different on some of them. This is a regular leaf tomato plant. I'd say this is probably the most common leaf type that you'll find on a tomato plant. And this is a potato leaf tomato plant. Other than the leaves looking different, there's no difference in the fruit or anything like that. But something that I have noticed is that the potato leaf tomato plants seem to fare better if you live in an area where your plants get fungal diseases like septoria leaf spot or early blight. I don't want to say that they are resistant to the diseases necessarily, but I have noticed that those diseases take longer to really take hold of the potato leaf plants, at least in my garden. I really don't know what the reason is, but I believe it's because the leaves on these plants, especially not really right now, but once the plants grow up, the leaves on the potato leaf plants are just really a lot thicker and sturdier than the leaves on the regular leaf plants. If you've grown potato leaf varieties, let me know if you've noticed a difference, because I certainly have. Before I get the rest of these planted out, I do want to mention something else. So, a lot of new gardeners and even experienced gardeners will freak out when they notice that their tomato plants have this purple coloring under the leaves. This isn't something you need to worry about. Once you get the plants out in your garden and they've been growing for a while and they're established, this goes away pretty quickly. It's caused by the plant not being able to take up enough phosphorus. This can happen because your house is at a cooler temperature than tomato plants like to grow in. So fertilizing them to death is not going to change it. Don't worry about it. It's perfectly normal. It's perfectly fine. Your plants will survive. They'll be healthy. Seeing purple on a mature tomato plant that's been grown in your garden for a while is a completely different can of worms. In that case, your plants have an actual phosphorus deficiency and you need to fertilize them or do whatever you need to do. But as far as seedlings go, this is perfectly normal. All right, guys, I've just finished potting up all of my seedlings, but before I go, I want to mention that I have not fertilized these seedlings with a liquid feed yet, because the potting mix that I used does contain slow-release fertilizer. I may end up having to fertilize them once or twice before I plant them in the ground. I'm a little over a month from planting them in the ground at this point, so I might have to fertilize them once or twice within the next month. If your potting mix doesn't have any fertilizer in it, then you will probably want to do a liquid feed once every 2 weeks or so. I would use something that has nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in it, aka N, P, and K. You can find that information on the box of fertilizer that you buy. Do not use the recommended fertilizer dosage that's on the box for your seedlings. Most of the time, those dosages are meant to be for mature plants that are planted in big containers outside or right in the ground, not little tiny seedlings in little cups. For example, if your fertilizer says mix a tablespoon of fertilizer per gallon of water, then break that down to 1/8 of a tablespoon per gallon of water, or maybe 1/4 of a tablespoon per gallon of water. By the way, when I fertilize my seedlings, it's usually with Miracle-Gro liquid feed, just because that's affordable for me and it's easy to get. I can just run up to whatever store and buy it. With the Miracle-Gro, I would definitely break it down to 1/8 of the recommended dosage. If you have just transplanted your seedlings into bigger cups like I have, I would wait about a week or so before I fertilize them. They're already a little stressed out from being transplanted, so give them a little bit of recovery time before you fertilize them, because fertilizing can be a stress in itself. You can accidentally burn your plants with fertilizer, whether you are using a chemical fertilizer or an organic fertilizer. Don't worry about it too much, just be careful, err on the side of caution. And that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.